Hey there, fellow dungeon delvers. Ready to craft a barbarian that's not just powerful, but legendary.
We're talking about a character that'll make their enemies tremble and their allies cheer.
Exactly. Today, we're diving into the best races to take your barbarian from zero to hero.
And while raw strength is definitely key, you might be surprised at the options that can truly elevate a barbarian's power. It's about synergy between race and class. It can turn a good character into an absolute force of nature.
Love it. And we're basing our deep dive today on top races for barbarians in D&D 5e, maximizing your power.
By Paul Bello.
Yeah, over at LitRPG Reads, it's a fresh take on some classic choices. And trust me, there are some real gems in here.
Absolutely. Paul really gets the nuances of making these choices work for you, especially if you're new to building a barbarian.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about Goliaths. I mean, talk about looking the part. These guys are practically mountains themselves.
They're a popular choice for a reason. That 2 bonus to strength is huge EE for a barbarian. We're not just talking about bending bars here. Imagine wielding a great axe with that kind of power behind every swing, especially once you factor in the rage bonus damage. You'll be cleaving through enemies like, I don't know, a hot knife through butter.
But that's not even mentioning their 1 to Constitution.
Right.
Everyone knows a tough barbarian is a happy barbarian.
Oh, absolutely.
And they've got that in spades.
Their Stone's Endurance racial trait is incredibly valuable too, especially early on. Think of it as a mini rage, even before you can actually use your rage. Once per day, you can shrug off a big chunk of damage, which is a lifesaver when you're just starting out and your hit points might not be as high.
I love that. It's like their own little insurance policy, for when things get a little dicey in those early dungeons.
Precisely. As a barbarian, you're going to be in the thick of it, so any extra durability you can get is a godsend.
Okay, next up we have City AE to talk about the kind of classic barbarian companion, the Half-Orc. The article describes them as Fury Unleashed, which honestly just sounds perfect.
It really does.
If Goliaths are the immovable mountain, Half-Orcs are the unstoppable avalanche.
That's a great way to put it. And when it comes to synergy between racial traits and the barbarian class, Half-Orcs are a prime example. Take Relentless Endurance, for instance. It essentially means that once per day, your Half-Orc can shrug off a fatal blow, the kind that would take down anybody else. Talk about a second chance.
So you're talking about those clutch moments where your barbarian should be down for the count. Yes. But they just, grit their teeth and keep coming.
Exactly. It's a lifesaver in those tense battles when you're facing down a really nasty enemy.
And then there's savage attacks.
Oh, yeah. Savage attacks. Now, for those who don't know, this basically means more damage when your barbarian lands a critical hit. And let's be real, with the barbarian's tendency to, swing big and swing hard, those critical hits are going to happen. It's about making those critical hits count. We're not just talking about winning fights. We're talking about delivering those knockout blows that'll make your enemies really think twice about messing with you.
And of course, we can't forget about, the intimidation factor, right? I mean, who's going to want to pick a fight with a raging barbarian who also happens to have menacing?
It's all about cultivating that aura of danger, even before the battle begins. That -1 penalty on an enemy saving throw against being frightened can really swing things in your favor, especially when you're trying to control the battlefield.
Speaking of battlefield control, I have to admit, I was a little surprised to see mountain dwarves on the list. I always figure bigger the barbarian, better the build, But Paul makes a really compelling case for these guys. What's the story there?
It's easy to underestimate. Mountain dwarves, they're like those unassuming boulders that turn out to be way heavier than they look. That 2 bonus to both strength and constitution is no joke. That's a game changer for a barbarian.
Yeah. That extra constitution really adds up, especially on top of the barbarian's already impressive hit points. We're talking about a character that can take a serious beating and come back for more. But I gotta admit, when I think of barbarians, I usually picture them kind of barreling across the battlefield.
Right.
Just scattering enemies like bowling pins.
Sure.
Paul did mention their speed, or lack thereof, with that 25-foot movement. How does that work for a class that's all about closing the distance?
Well, that's where strategy comes into play. You're right. Mountain dwarf barbarians aren't known for their speed. But what they lack in swiftness, they more than make up for in resilience.
So instead of being the lightning strike, they're more like the earthquake.
Yeah, exactly.
Unstoppable, and always in command of the ground they stand on.
Exactly. And their dwarven resilience really plays into that. They have advantage on saving throws against poison, which Might not sound like a huge deal, but trust me, it comes in handy more often than you'd think, especially in those creepy dungeons.
Oh, tell me about it.
Filled with who knows what kind of nasty traps and creatures.
You know what? That's a really good point. I can't tell you how many times my characters have gotten hit with some unexpected poison effect. It's like the Dungeon Master's favorite trick.
Right. It's always the seemingly harmless things like a stray spider or a suspicious glass of wine.
Yeah.
But with Dwarven Resilience, your Mountain Dwarf Barbarian just shrugs off those toxins like it's nothing.
They just wipe their beard and keep going. I love it. Okay, so we've got the immovable Goliaths, the unstoppable Half-Orcs, and the unshakable Mountain Dwarves. What's next on our list of Barbarian power picks?
Well, if you're looking for a race that's all about customization, then the Variant Human might be your new best friend. This is where you can really tailor your Barbarian to fit your exact playstyle.
Talk about options, and the key here is that first level feat, right? For those who haven't ventured into Variant Human territory before, explain why that's such a big deal.
So normally in D&D, you wouldn't get to choose a feat, which is like a special ability that gives your character an edge until later levels. But Variant Humans start with one right out of the gate, which is HUGE.
It's like getting a head start on your epic destiny. And Paul's article lists a ton of feats that would be awesome for a barbarian. I'm thinking Great Weapon Master for pure damage output. That sounds absolutely brutal in the best way possible.
Oh, absolutely. With Great Weapon Master, you're essentially sacrificing a bit of accuracy for the potential to deal really devastating blows. Imagine your barbarian already wielding this massive weapon, landing a critical hit, but now with even more extra damage from the feat.
It's like saying, sure, I might miss sometimes, but when I hit, you're really going to feel it. Okay, I'm sold. What else have we got? Any other feats that stand out as particularly epic?
Well, if you want to play a more mobile barbarian, which might seem a little counterintuitive, but hear me out. The mobile feat is a game changer. Increased movement speed, ignoring difficult terrain, and avoiding opportunity attacks. You basically become a whirlwind of controlled chaos on the battlefield.
I love the image of a barbarian just zipping around the battlefield, dodging blows, delivering these devastating strikes. It's not what you'd expect, which makes it even cooler.
Exactly. It's all about subverting expectations and keeping your opponents guessing. That's what makes the Variant Human so much fun to play. You can build a barbarian that truly reflects your own unique vision.
Speaking of unique visions, let's talk about Dragonborn, because honestly, who hasn't dreamed of being a fire-breathing, earth-shaking force of nature? I gotta say, the idea of a Dragonborn barbarian just screams epic. You know, it's like the ultimate power fantasy. You've got the raw strength and fury of the barbarian, but then combined with like the majesty and might of a dragon.
It's a really potent combination, and it's more versatile than you might think, too. The draconic ancestry options, like fire, lightning, acid, poison, those aren't just for flavor. They add a whole other layer of like tactical depth to your barbarian.
So it's not just about hitting things really hard anymore. We're talking strategy, elemental chaos.
Exactly. You need to clear a path through a crowd of enemies, unleash a wave of fire, want to pick off like a pesky spellcaster from a distance. Lightning breath has got you covered.
And the best part is those breath weapons aren't tied to your rage, right?
Nope.
So even when your barbarian is like all raged out, they can still unleash some dragon-fueled mayhem.
That's right.
It's like having a secret weapon. Or maybe not so secret in this case.
Right.
Now, one thing that stood out to me in the article was that Dragonborn also get a 1 bonus to charisma. That might not seem like much for a class that's, known for smashing first and asking questions later.
Sure.
But I feel like there's some real potential there.
Yeah, you're right. That 1 to charisma can add a surprising amount of depth to your Dragonborn barbarian. It suggests a certain presence, a commanding aura that goes beyond just being physically imposing.
So we're not just talking about a raging beast here. This is a barbarian who could lead a war party, give an inspiring speech, maybe even, negotiate a truce if the situation calls for it.
Exactly. It's about breaking the mold of what people expect from a barbarian. You can be a force of nature on the battlefield, Andy, a compelling figure off of it.
I love it. It's like playing a barbarian with hidden depths. Okay. So to recap our epic journey to craft the ultimate barbarian, we've got the mighty Goliaths, the relentless Half-Orcs, the unyielding Mountain Dwarves, the versatile Variant Humans, and the awe-inspiring Dragonborn. That's quite a lineup.
It really is. And the best part is there's no single right answer. the best race for your barbarian really depends on your individual playstyle, the campaign setting, and honestly, just what you find the most FU in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to be an unstoppable force of nature, a cunning tactician, a charismatic leader, or maybe a little bit of everything? The choice is yours. But before you rush off to finalize your character sheet and dive into that next adventure,
Yep.
I have one final question to leave you with. You got your race figured out, but what about your barbarian subclass? Will you embrace the primal fury of the path of the totem warrior, becoming like a whirlwind of claws and teeth?
Right.
Or perhaps you'll channel the spirits of the wilds with the path of the beast, transforming into a fearsome predator right there on the battlefield.
So many cool options.
So many epic possibilities. The path to barbarian greatness IS paved with tough choices. But hey, that's part of the fun, right? Until next time, may your rage be mighty, your rolls be ever in your favor, and your barbarian legends echo throughout the realms.